Hello and welcome to our Solving the Tech Talent Shortage webinar presented by ProVal Technologies. Again, my name is Greg White on the business development team here at ProVal. Let me be the first to say I've been very excited about this one for quite some time. If you've been in this tech space for any length of time, you know that hiring, retaining, and just finding good tech talent is a struggle. So I'm sure this is going to be a good one for everyone. Today, I'm joined by some of the brightest minds in our industry, hopefully to shed some light on the current state of affairs and more importantly, present some real world applicable solutions. So without further ado, let me introduce these great people I have on the call with me. Ladies first, Amy Kardel. Amy is a huge proponent of the MSP industry. I'm sure you've heard her speak at one point. She is the Senior Vice President of CompTIA and co-founder of CleverDocs, which is an MSP in California. She has a very unique real-world approach to the issues MSPs face. It's always a pleasure to hear her speak. Amy, thanks so much.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks.
Next, we have Michael Nelson. We ran into Michael over there in Denver at Evolve and had a very lengthy talk with him and was very impressed by his story and really what he was doing in the MSP industry. Similar to Amy, as an MSP in California, TLC Tech. He also is a co-founder of Scaled, which I'm sure he'll get into a little bit later, but just brief overview. He provides level 2, level 3 engineers from South Africa to MSPs across the US and Canada. And then finally, Michael, thank you for coming.
Glad to be here, thanks.
Finally, ProVal's very own Vikram Khanna. Vikram is the founder and CEO of ProVal Tech. He started his career at Big 5 Consulting, worked with a host of Fortune 500 companies, and then he actually stumbled upon the MSP industry at a SMB Nation event where he fell in love with the great industry we have here, and ever since been working to help MSPs scale through optimizing backend tools. Again, thank you guys all for joining.
Thanks, Craig. We're in great company today.
So as you can see, I'm by far the least experienced here, but still extremely excited to hear what everyone has to say. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, our viewers can get some real world solutions to help this tech talent shortage gap. But before we get into those solutions, I want to kick us off with just general overview of the current state of the MSP workforce, and then what that looks like to each of you. Amy, I'd love to throw this one to you first. Today's current tech MSP landscape, what does it look like to you, retaining and hiring in the US? And then how did we get here?
Great question for CompTIA. You know, a lot of folks don't know CompTIA has a ton of free research for you on exactly these questions. And every month we publish a tech jobs report. So if you just Google CompTIA Tech Jobs Report, or you can look in detail, drill down to your zip code and see what's going on in our cyberstates.org report. We put that together. We just got another contract with the National Science Foundation to continue that research for US because it's really a critical job role that we have. And we know we have what's called a talent gap. So when we post how many jobs are available versus how many people are available to fill those and who's going to change that pipeline landscape, it gets attention at the highest federal level because this is an issue not just for us MSP owners, not just for our vendor community. It's a national security issue. It's a national GDP issue. It's a big deal. And when you think about quality jobs, so job quality is sort of a nerdy term that think tank folks like to talk about. And there's some factors, and the most definitive kind of test for job quality comes out of Cornell University, but it's kind of things you'd think of like, is it well paid? Is it safe? Is there upward mobility? Is it going to be, I mean, physically safe? Like, I'm not going to hurt myself doing this job. Is it have good prospects into the future to be a career that exists and isn't offshored? All these questions around job quality are really high for us. Obviously, some of the issues around being top point of the spear in cybersecurity, the stresses of IT, some of those, you know, obviously are a factor for our teams. And I think that weighs into retention. And I think we'll get to talking about company culture where that's a factor too. But overall, job quality in our industry is awesome. And people have autonomy and purpose. And we have to explain that, though, better than we have been. I think we assume people know what it's like to work at MSP. My own kids, I've got 4 of them. I don't think they knew what their family business was, because there's not much to see. You sit in front of a computer, talk on the phone. I remember my little guy used to mock me or, imitate me, like, mom's at work, she's pacing across the room on a cell phone. It's not like being a firefighter where you have a truck and a hat and boots where it looks cool and that kids can say, oh, I can see that job. I can see myself in that job. We don't have really cool props, like a doctor has a stethoscope. We don't have, I don't know, we have to really work on that. So the image and the marketing of what we do could be improved, but what we do have is a quality job. So that gets attention, like I was saying, at the highest level. And when we look at apprenticeship programs that I'm really involved in through the U.S. Department of Labor, they're very excited that we're doing this because it's an accessible job that doesn't require physical strength or, lots of things that kind of weed out some people, and it can be something that everyone can do. So the interesting thing about our industry is we're new. We're still considered an emerging industry in the categories in the Department of Labor, right? Kind of funny. I mean, but if you think about it, not many of us had parents or grandparents in these roles. These are all kind of new occupations. So there's truth to that. I would say, obviously, we're not as emerging as we used to be, but we're still considered nascent. And this job report we look at, I have some data to tell you about. So October, we just dropped that data set. And, we've been going between 300 and 400,000 job postings every month for the last year. We're on the high end of that right now. We haven't seen that dip much. Employment growth has actually hit a high in our tech space. And we track that data through the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US. So we get exact data on our job codes. We have a big pile of those that we, comb through and publish. So we're at a high of employment. The leading states aren't going to surprise you. California has the most, then Texas. Then it's sort of clustered around the Beltway around DC, probably due to defense industry and government contracting. We have Virginia and Maryland weighing in there, and then it's Illinois and Florida. So if you're in those markets, you're in the big ones. And we think a lot about what are even if we turn on all the taps at the universities, the community colleges, high schools, vocational training schools, everywhere we could we meet that demand? And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to take all of us to grow talent because we're not going to be able to just harvest it. There's definitely a shortage. So we also do a survey of MSPs. And if we think about what are we thinking about? Well, 4 in 10 MSPs are looking for some cyber set of skills in their hiring. About 40% are training their staff to upskill them and keep them upskilling. Almost all of that training includes a certification in their pathway. And of course, that's what CompTIA is known for. So we watch that and talk a lot about not just our entry-level ticket into tech A+ certification, but our stack into cybersecurity above that. And we see a lot of that focus on training and upskilling continuing. So that's definitely the case. But one thing I want to really talk about is the importance of realizing not everybody needs a 4-year degree for these roles. That's something that, as we look at this talent gap, really need to remember. Gosh, someone might end up going on to get their 4-year degree or further after they've been in a job for a few years, but they might not need to get into the job. So if you're currently speccing something requiring a bachelor's degree, you're one of the few that's left doing that, just to mention it. And certainly certification and a growth plan can lead to that later. I'm not saying that those degrees aren't nice and useful and a stepping stone to certain careers, but in general, we're not seeing that be a requirement anymore. But we do still see some what we call over-speccing, where people are asking for everything under the moon stars, including a bachelor's degree, maybe to get entry-level position. And I would encourage you to rethink that because it also opens the door to a bigger pool. So I've talked a lot about what the landscape is. I think, we're new, we're figuring this out. We have a great thing to talk about. And I think if we talk about the why we do what we do to help American businesses, to help cybersecurity nationally, we have a great story to tell. And we need to always remember that we're in the catbird seat. This is a lot better career than many out there. Thank you.
No, that was great points, Amy. I wanna rewind back to when I was getting my first job. This is year 2000, 22 years ago. And back then, having an engineering degree, it was you either go into engineering You go into computer science, programming for a big company, or it's investment banking. And MSP was not on the landscape for universities, graduates, placements. And I think that's a huge opportunity for our industry. Going back to your point of the maturity, I think we're still a young industry. We're still evolving. There's a lot of opportunities that I personally see. And I wish I had personally been introduced to this industry way sooner, because as soon as I discovered it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to be doing. The path to making an impact, the path of growth, the path of what you actually get to realize and see the fruit of your results is just amazing within the MSP space. But again, going back to the whole recruiting and talent, I feel like the evolution is happening. I feel like MSPs are beginning to realize that they need HR departments. They need to get out there and figure out different ways on how to create that talent, train that talent, but also find that talent using formal ways. So I think there's a lot of things in the mix, and I think we're all progressing towards a very, very positive and increasingly beneficial result and outcome for all parties here.
Yeah, I agree with that exactly. Having an MSP like Amy has, we've struggled over the last several years trying to find talent. COVID changed everything on us, and it made it so that techs could go almost anywhere because now they can work remotely. So now it's not just a question of where to find the techs, but it's also one of the things that I think has really changed in our industry is now, how do you keep them? Because everybody has an amazing amount of options. Amy, the numbers that you threw out of the open job positions, if you're in California trying to find a tech, you're in a bad spot. So key is once you get them, is how are you going to keep them happy? Because they have so many more options. And I think what's changed, what I've seen in the change in the last three years especially, is techs want four things. They want a challenge. They want to be able to grow, and they want a daily challenge. They don't want to do the same repetitive tasks. They want to be challenged in their skills. They want to work with a great team. They don't want to just be over there on the side, kind of remote. And especially a lot of people working remote now, that office, the water cooler talk, that's kind of lost. And so making sure that there's a really good way for them to have a way to be part of a team, whether that's on premise or whether that's remote. Amy had talked to this a lot, but they want an opportunity to grow. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to be able to go to courses, they want to be able to get certs. Sometimes this may lead, and I think Amy and I have talked about this before, that may mean that someday they leave you. But that's part of this evolution of our industry, is that people are going to learn and grow and keep advancing in their career. And then I think the final piece is, and sometimes I get some pushback on this, but they want a place to call home. They want a place that matters anymore. It's not just about a paycheck, but it's about the experience and that it fits in with their lives. So being able to have that place where they can learn, they can grow, like Amy talked about, well paid, all of the things that they need, but also a place where they have home, right? It's their people, and they have a team, and they get to learn and grow and really have fun. I think that's changed drastically in the last few years.
That's all great points, and it's funny as you were talking. I mean, there's no doubt that there is a tech talent shortage, right? These are all great points, but I want to ask you guys, bigger picture, how does the lack of each of this tech talent affecting the MSP industry as a whole? Like, we're in a deficit. So just as a whole, why does this all matter?
Well, if I can jump in, and I'm not sure if it's my turn, but I'm going to.
No, go ahead.
Take it, Amy.
All right. I think every time you have a challenge, the solution's kind of baked into it somewhere, but you have to turn it on its head. So Michael was just talking about, gosh, all this talent has all these choices. They can work remotely for anywhere. Well, guess what? That also means that our talent can do that. And we're seeing a huge number of opportunities for virtual roles. It may not be 100% virtual, but we are seeing partial to 100% virtual really grow, right? I mean, there's no reason not to consider that. So the challenge of the fact that people can work from anywhere also means that they can work for us for anywhere. Obviously, that's the flip side of the coin. The challenge that we have that we don't see a lot of diversity in tech. I don't know how many times I've been the only woman in the room. and you guys are all great, but wouldn't it be great if we had more women, because we also need more people. So the challenge we have of not having enough diversity, gender, color, location, all these things, those are also opportunities. Like if we can attract a more diverse audience, those are people that haven't felt the door open to them. So the overarching term that we use to talk about culture and place and everything that has to do with your hiring environment is employment branding. So I would challenge anyone to really consider, what is the story you're telling potential hires about your organization? Are you sharing enough about what it's like to work there in your job descriptions? Are you sharing enough on social media, maybe about the last, we just talked about food right before we got started. So maybe the last company meal you had together, or your chili cook-off, whatever it is that you do that makes your company kind of different and special, and maybe even a little weird. I think people expect more authentic communication. And so some of that story and branding, you can really bring into talking about your personality. And that way probably you'll find people that vibe with that too, but think about making sure that, one of the things I've always joked about is if there's one more golf tournament at a MSP, that a lot of women don't golf, right? So think about that. Like you want to talk about things that interest
Good point.
everybody.
For real.
There's some women who golf. I actually golf, but yeah, it's not the most common thing. So, think about your employment branding story and what you can share. But also think about not just the soft side of stuff, but the technical growth plan you're going to put someone on. My number one piece of advice for anyone who wants to get into tech, who might also be watching this because they thought this was for how do I get a job in tech, is look for a company that's going to invest in you. Look for a company that's going to put you on a growth plan and move you around the company, through the company, and up through the company, and maybe even celebrate if you move on, right? Wouldn't that be a nice thing? Because not everyone's going to stay everywhere forever. We have to realize that as training providers and as owners and as employees, that celebrating that growth sometimes means growing to the next thing. But if you can keep talent growing, you can keep them longer in your organization, and that's a win-win because it means that you have a growth mindset. While someone's there, they're doing a better job, and there's a real psychological benefit to being a growing and learning organization. It shifts challenges from being challenges to being, oh, this is a chance to learn and get better. And it improves customer service, retention, profitability, all those things when you really shift that mindset. So I would talk about the employment branding of, the culture part that Michael was so emphasizing, but I would also really include the training growth plans. CompTIA has a whole bunch of those available for you on the website. We have kind of an eye chart of all the certs, CompTIAs and others that, make up a role. That's one of our favorite downloads for people. We talk about how we can provide that training at CompTIA. We have lots of community colleges that can do that too. We're a big tent where we bring together that intent to grow. We want to really help people unlock their potential and keep moving up the ladder. And I think that's a story you need to tell to attract and retain the best talent.
And Amy, I want to add on to that because you brought up a really awesome point about the story about your company. We go, as an MSP, we spend so much time on getting our clients to review on Google, so that as other people come in, other potential clients, they're seeing how other people think about us. It's just as important to do that with your employees. So if you've got a job ad up somewhere, have your employees, your current employees, go in and post reviews about your company. At Scaled, we've got ongoing people, but when they get brought on through our system, to go in and post how the system worked for them, how it is being involved with Scaled. I can't tell you the number of people that have told me, I read the reviews and that's one of the reasons I applied, is because of what other employees have said to you. They're going to Glassdoor, they're going to the places and looking up reviews on whether you're a good place to work or not. So that's part of the culture that you can build in, is having that place that's so awesome to work and asking them to go post about it.
No, that's very true. I am always amazed, and I'm always wondering if we did everything right in terms of growing careers, hiring people, and we had access to this pool of people coming in through apprenticeships and what have you. What would that world look like, where every MSP has every person that they need on their teams, very engaged, right? Because I feel like there is that business. We talk to MSP owners every single day. And I don't think anybody's unscathed from this issue of finding people and the amount of work that exists out there. Can you imagine what an accelerated rate of growth we would have as an industry if everybody had access to anyone they needed, had access to all the training, development parts, career growth? It would be a completely different world. And, I think we'd be in a very different place, which I'm sure we will get to. But I'm sure it just slows things down for our space with the crunch we're facing today.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's an impediment to growth. It's become the binding constraint for a lot of companies. I think there's two things everyone talks about having to have a mature MSP. It's a predictable sales engine, right? Like get that figured out, you're on track to do good things. But man, once you get that figured out, or maybe I think that's the first thing, then it's the predictable talent engine, isn't it? Because and gosh, all of our assumptions and sort of things we took for granted have been turned up on end, given just the tectonic shifts of the pandemic. But the opportunity to really figure out how to do that is so important to the growth of the value of your company. The predictable talent pipeline, the predictable, how are you going to meet customer demand with quality, reduce risk, all those things happen through talent. So yeah, it's an important thing to figure out.
Man, it's really awesome to hear you guys speak. I wish if every MSP owner in the world had like that kind of mindset, how I feel like this engine would just move forward. No like poaching or no like, this guy's mine or that guy's yours. So again, a great part to start at, to say the least. So and I know we're talking about the MSP workforce as a whole right now, but I wanted to switch gears here and talk about solutions. So you talked about kind of solutions on a broad scale. But instead of, because everyone here has heard it, right? Good company culture, benefits, salaries, pay this guy more than the next guy. I'm going to take this guy. But at the end of the day, it's, that's just superficial. So can you guys talk to me about real world out of the box solutions that a lot of people may not know to provide immediate solutions? So again, Amy, would love to kick it off with you. You're such an excellent speaker. What are you doing with CompTIA, maybe behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, that you can share with us that provides this real world, solutions?
Yeah. So something you I think everybody knows CompTIA for our certifications, right?
Yeah.
Like A+, Network Plus, ticketed tech type certifications. And then most people know too, there's like 13 in the stack, so you can go all the way up. But let's focus on the entry level, because I want you to have a farm team. The first thing I think you need is a farm team. And I don't want you hiring above your existing team. I want you to grow your existing team and like pyramid people up, because let's just face it, anytime somebody's hired above you, it's super demotivating, right? So let's assume we're going to focus on farm team and grow everybody, because that's the ideal state. You may at some point need to hire in above. I'll tell you, in decades of hiring, the few times I've done that where I've hired above, it has failed like a bomb, and also I think, when you start at the bottom and work your talent strategy that way, you develop people for the tool set and the clients and the processes and the culture that you have and want. If you brought in a rock star stuff from somewhere else, it just sometimes feels like it doesn't always work. So I wouldn't say it's always failed, but more often than not, it does fail when you try to hire above. So I'm going to talk to you about a strategy that's going to be building your bench, always having a bench, and putting everybody on a growth plan. So first thing you should have is everybody should be on a growth plan. They should have a map on what track they're on. Is it network? Is it security? Is it project? Is it sales? Is it dispatch? Like whatever you want them to be on, data analysis. You might have another vertical in your mix too. But really think about and ask people what they want to do. My gosh, don't tell them, right? Crazy idea. What are you good at and what do you like to do? Tell me. Okay, good. We'll work on that. If your job could be all of this and a bag of chips, what would it be? It's not always going to be everything you want, but if we could do that, let's try. So in communication, a good growth plan is mutually developed. And you know, one of the tricks is having that thing written down, like anything, plan and execute, right? Some things do better with a plan, and talent development is one of those. And so you need to, and I would say all of us should do this. Goals matter. Someone in this room knows a lot about goals. It's an inside joke with Michael, who wrote a book on goals. But you know, really having that clarity around what is my personal growth plan as an owner too. What am I going to get done this year? How many webinars do I want to speak at? What do I want to be known for? What am I going to learn? We should all be long life learners. I like to call it that, because a long life is full of learning. But the developing that plan, having it in writing and saying, okay, so when are you going to sit for your next exam? And actually helping your employee, teammate, and yourself write down and say, I'm going to publish that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take that course by a date, you know, and then following up on that. A good manager, a good leader doesn't just blah, blah, blah and move on. It's like about the execution. So circling back to that growth plan, say, okay, it's a month out. Okay, you said you're going to take Security Plus on Halloween. We should have a test score that shows you're going to pass by the 15th of October. And if you're not hitting a good score, we have to figure out why. And we have to reschedule your test. But dang it, start with some dates on the calendar. Don't just be blah, blah, vague. And so CompTIA has a lot of things to help you with this. We are the big tent. You know, we have delivery partners all over the world. 1 in 4 people in tech have our certifications globally. We're the second largest certifying body after Microsoft. And we have a stack for, you know, 30 career pathways. But the point of this is you could take our courses, you could have our people take through community college. We're the big tent. We have a lot of partners that are private, public, and you can take them from us too. A lot of resources online to be self-paced now that are really great. So I think the concrete step is get the growth plan and then figure out who's going to be your training partner, and have a plan and work the plan. The best people in talent, there's no silver bullet here. It's just it's one foot after the other on a talent development plan. I hope that helps someone figure out what they need to do.
Yeah, so it seems like CompTIA is, you know, really about investing into the people, you know, providing building blocks and spots for those entering to succeed. Michael and Vikram, even if you want to chime in, I know Scaled offers a different approach, and Vikram, I know obviously our business. You want to kind of give us your side of the story and what you're thinking of solutions, or
Sure.
give us some access into your mind.
Yeah, so you know, I want to talk on what Amy said about growing your team. That's really, really important. Once they get in there, you know, going back to the culture, having a culture where they have a path to grow. What we found as an MSP is COVID changed everything, and we needed talent now. And that's really where things started changing in my MSP. We actually started using tech talent from South Africa about 3.5 years ago. It's really impressed with their work ethic and their skills. They've got some pretty mad tech skills. We've been in Evolve. My MSP has been in Evolve for years, and we just kept hearing from everybody that nobody could find techs. This was just a huge problem across the board. And so we decided to take what we had learned about using techs in South Africa from our MSP and then started Scaled. One of the things where we think, so we find level 2 and level 3 engineers, and we place them full-time as staff augmentation in MSPs across the US and Canada. Where we like to think that we're different is that we actually are the employer. We bring them on, we deal with all the taxes, everything that's dealt with that way, the legal issues, all of that, and then place them in MSPs at a flat monthly fee. That way the MSPs don't have to deal with trying to go through all the headaches of the legal issues of being able to hire somebody from overseas. But it gives them access to a pool of talent that is, as Amy knows as well, and Vikram, you as well, it's just it's a shallow pool right now in a lot of ways. So the culture, the training, giving them the paths is critically important. Getting them onto the team right now is where a lot of people are suffering. So that's one of the things that I think is really important. And whether you find somebody remotely in the US or whether you're using a remote tech from overseas, I think the most critically important thing for a company, for an MSP to do, is to make sure that they are treated exactly like every other tech in the business. If you've got on call, they go into an on-call rotation. They're part of the same chat groups. They're part of the same teams. Make sure that there's things that you're doing to incorporate them into your team, that they are just like anybody else. The only difference of having somebody remote, again, overseas or in the US in the same state, whatever, the only difference is that they're coming in over a video connection instead of driving into your office. That should be the only difference with hiring somebody remotely.
Yeah, no, great points. Just to add to that, Michael, we do the exact same thing. I think with especially COVID's kind of opened up the floodgates where, the world's our backyard. We MSPs and everybody else can go out and recruit and find people wherever they want. So that is no longer the limiter. But I also want to encourage MSPs and other businesses to look at sometimes what solutions they're looking for versus just people. Sometimes there's a lot of options like software technologies, automation, looking at your tools, looking at processes. It's not always about finding a person. It's about filling a business need, which has a solution. And a lot of times it is a person, but there is always a case for, hey, there's software out there or automation that could replace that. And I feel like it's important to kind of keep your thinking a little open along those lines. But no, excellent points, both Amy and Michael.
I will totally underscore what you just said, Vikram. You know what? If you ask your team, what do they need? They need more bodies. They need them yesterday. They need 7 hires. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's not always true. It could be sharpening the saw, getting your tool set dialed. It could be the process issue. It could be the partner that you outsource to. It could be, there's a lot of ways to get there from here. But yeah, inevitably, if you ask your team what they need, it's headcount. And it's just like it's where people go is, I need more people. Gosh, I'm drowning over here. I need more people. And you can't fault people for that, but you have to, as a leader, step back and say, is that really the issue, or is it something else? And problem solve around that with your team and partners. Because yeah, we're always going to have, I think, that feeling that there's just not enough cooks in the kitchen to get things done. But yeah, can we work smarter, not harder? Can we, find some ways to mitigate that? I would be remiss on CompTIA's part too if I didn't mention that we've also been focusing the last couple of years on really developing a solution for the channel around talent in apprenticeship. So if you Google CompTIA apprenticeships for tech, if you're an employer who wants to hire apprentices, we've been partnering with a lot of community colleges and also training organizations and ourselves to develop and point talent through apprenticeship to hire an MSP. So we've been working a lot on that. There's been a large initiative around the ConnectWise community. You'll be hearing about IT Nation. They really took a leadership position in this. And I think it's something that scales down small and big, and we'd love to help you with that. So if you're interested as an employer, please come see CompTIA Apprenticeships for Tech. We have some federal incentives to help kind of offset the administrative costs, and we are a national program sponsor, so we can make it easy. An apprenticeship is basically a trainee job. And it's in everybody's best interest to help people who want to get into tech do that. So that's why the Department of Labor is involved there. Thanks.
Oh, great stuff, guys. And let me address the elephant in the room. I mean, I'm sales with ProVal, so I hear this a ton. So maybe this is for Vikram and Michael or so. How do you guys address the fears that a lot of business owners have about the remote workforce? Specifically the big bad wolf, right? Outsourcing. It's a scary word nowadays. How can these people integrate with my workforce in my organization? Is this a long-term solution, or is this, these are things that are on MSP's minds. So can you help, alleviate some of this?
I'll start with that because I was the poster child for that. In my MSP, I own the building that we were in, and our staff had been after me for being able to work from home for years, and I was adamantly against it. Not going to happen. Don't ask. Never going to happen. Nope. No. End of story. Just one day a week. Nope. Not going to happen. And in the environment, okay, we could get away with that. But it was also very much an old way school of thinking. My thought was the clients are never going to accept it. And we can never, you can't control what the tech's doing. So those were the two biggest fears I had. Well, COVID forced us all home. We went home. Turns out, because, back to Amy's point about everybody just wants more bodies, we have the metrics that we pay attention to with our KPIs. So we really knew how many tickets a tech should do, how long it should take. We sliced and diced those numbers. So we knew when we needed bodies. Well, COVID changed everything and we couldn't find those bodies. So we ended up, once we went home with our original staff, we found them to be more productive. They were happier. It just worked out well. And all of our clients were fully accepting of it because we all had to remain home. So the two biggest things are the clients won't accept it and that they won't integrate well with the staff. Everybody on this call had 2 years to deal with those exact issues because at some level, every one of us had to go home and had to have their staff working from home. So we kind of figured out how to deal with that, having our staff working remotely. So we got over that part. As an MSP, I talked to a lot of our clients. They're having the same problems hiring. They're having the same issues that we are. So the fact that we were able to stay staffed up by using overseas staff, by using people from South Africa, they just accepted it. And it became, we never tried to hide it. We never did anything. It's like, people are like, hey, they have, they sound like they're from Australia. And actually they're South African. Then explain to them what we were doing. So it got over both of those fears. Is the clients started accepting it. We're just open about it. And we really worked hard, like I talked about before, of integrating them into your teams. That's the most important thing. I think it's also really important when you're bringing in remote people, again, whether it be, if you're in California and you're hiring somebody from Georgia with a really Southern drawl and the Southern accent, or whether you're going overseas, having a cultural fitment that works with your team and with your clients, making sure that they're gonna fit and making sure that you train them in your culture. So sit them down with, when you first bring them on, sit them down with your best tech, have them shadow the best techs, have the tech show them, and then have them take the calls with the tech shadowing them, so that you're really making sure, because at this point, when you've got somebody remote, it's not just about having them being able to close tickets. It's about having them carry your culture and your values forward to your clients. That doesn't happen just organically. That's got to be trained. It's got to be planned. It's got to be part of their onboarding. And as Amy will keep talking about, part of their growth plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the part of the story you have to remember is, our clients are having this problem too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been to a restaurant recently or on an airplane or anywhere there's anybody in service, guess what? We all have this problem. And, no one really has an answer to where all the workers went. There's a big demographic issue that I think got accelerated. The silver tsunami of retirement is a piece of it. People who, realized they don't want to, I live to work versus work to live. Like, people had some calculus there, like, hey, maybe I should live, not work. So there's been some of those opting outs, but the bucket is still sloshing. It'll probably get better in some ways, but it'll always be a challenge as we face a smaller generation in the workforce. The numbers aren't good for a while until they grow, plus those retirements. But everybody's got this challenge, and we just have to be a better place to work than other industries. So, we should think about that.
Well, also alleviating some of these outsourcing fears. I think getting more technical, I think one of the biggest things is security, right? People being in one place, being under one firewall was a big thing. I think technology has solved a lot of these issues for us. And I think as long as the partners that you're working with, your employees, whether it be subcontractors, outsiders, having the right standards and security, having the right compliance adherences, as long as those boxes are checked, I feel a lot of those issues are taken care of, because it's no different than controlling somebody that's within your office premise, following similar guidelines. So I do feel security technology does solve a lot of this. And, again, vetting your vendors and partners and making sure that they are following guidelines and compliances that are at least at par with what your organization is doing for your customers is just extremely, extremely important. And, that's kind of one of the fundamental things here as you partner up.
Yeah, Vikram, if I can piggyback on that, one of the things we strongly encourage, and this is whether you've got people overseas or in the same state, if you do not own and control the machine that they're using to do their business for you, get a VDI, get an RDP, get a Microsoft 365 virtual desktop, make sure that they're 2FA'd in. This way, every single bit of data that you're touching, that's your client's data, is inside of the US, it's protected by 2FA, and you have absolute and full control over it. It's just too easy and too cheap not to have that set up now.
Great points all around. Great points. And I just want to make sure that we have time for questions. I think we have a couple in the chat already. So here, let's end this with a lightning round question. So we can go around the group. I don't care who answers first. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the MSP workforce? Just blunt, right to the point. Let me know.
I'm pessimistic about our ability to increase diversity. I think if we could have, we would have. And we need to think about, like, gosh, what countries have figured out how to get more women in the workforce? In the US, we have a whole bunch of challenges, like childcare is a challenge, and this and the other thing. But like, why haven't we been able to move the needle on that? That's a little bit pessimistic for me. But at the same time, I wouldn't be who I am unless I was optimistic to say that same challenge is an opportunity, because we don't have enough folks working in tech, so let's go get some of those folks. That's an opportunity. Thanks.
I'm optimistic. I think there's so many opportunities out there. On the MSP side, things are growing. On the scaled side, we're finding a lot of partners that need talent. They've got the business. They just need to find the talent now. Be that they're using that talent right now, today they need it. And like Amy has been talking about, building that bench. Good.
Yeah, Greg, I'm very optimistic. I love this industry. I think it has a great future. Going back to what we talked about, we're still very young. We're going through a big evolution here, and I'd love to see what this industry looks like in 50 years from today. And I am sure and very confident that a lot of things like diversity and access to talent and, having the right people, standards, everything is going to become very commonplace for the MSP space, just the way it is, in something like financial services or manufacturing today. So we do have a bright future, and it's great to see, what CompTIA is doing in terms of investing and growing our space, and with what Michael's doing in terms of globalizing the space. I do believe that we are spreading our wings more and more. And the journey shall continue, but it's a very fun place to be.
No doubt. You don't gotta pull my arm back. I know we're in the best industry. It's just, it'll take some time for everyone else to see, and I'm sure it's going in that direction.
Yeah, it's fun to be part of something we can shape, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let me ask some questions here. Looks like we have three questions in the chat. Let me see, pull this up. I think this was from earlier. We got this early on in the webinar. So if I'm already happy to hire people of any gender, sexual orientation, creed, nationality, not a degree, what else is there to do? Like he's like, please come to me. I'll take anyone. Just so what else is there to do? And you guys, I'm sure, have touched upon this a little bit, but if you want to.
Yeah, I think we answered the question since he asked it, I hope. But I'll add a little bit to this. Obviously, don't hire just anybody with a pulse, right? Stay picky.
Yep.
But I love that you're actually putting out there that you want a diverse workforce. And of course, I think you tell that story. What I would say is it's not enough for you to know that. Back to what I was saying about employment branding, I think you have to tell the story and talk about what you're doing with your team and why people would want to join it, and and being very intentional about even the team activities you do. Talking about football on Monday morning or what night Monday night football. So talking about football on Tuesday morning is a turnoff for a bunch of people who aren't into football, right? Like everything
Good
can
point.
be, think about how it brings everyone in the team in. If you notice that, you've got a bunch of folks that are always talking about going running, whatever it is, if not everybody's into it, like clue in. Don't be a dork and not realize that, you're talking about stuff that half the team doesn't care about. So, and intentionally, as a leader, try to tell that story outside your company so that it's part of your employment brand. Thank you.
Again, having your employees review on wherever you're doing the job postings, make sure that, heck, get them. If you've got client testimonials on your website, have employee testimonials on your website, because everybody that we set up for interviews with our clients, they're going to the client websites, learning about them. They're looking at client reviews. They're looking at all of that. It's important.
Yeah. Oh, can I add something I like to do as a best practice too? When you're bringing folks into interview, like be it virtually or in person, have them like just hang out with one of your teammates, go to coffee. Like it's not part of the interview, but it's like interview us.
Yep.
Make sure that they get that authentic voice. Of course, it's part of the interview if they treat the staff badly or if they don't show up on time, like that's going to be part of the interview. But really, they should have a chance to interview you too, and you need to get to that point where you're that confident, and transparent.
Yeah, no, it's totally a two-way street. We've hammered this point, right? Culture is super important, and I think we've all experienced it. A wrong hire will actually set you back.
Yep.
So you're better off not doing work and turning clients versus hiring the wrong person and letting your name and reputation be at stake. So that culture fitment, just super important. It's hard because sometimes we just need that body in, but you're better off not having a body than having the wrong body in.
No, that's great points. And then we have a question that's actually sort of similar. So again, if you can nail down these points, but for hiring non-remote engineers, and I get it, culture, like we talked about, but we want someone local. Like, how do you find that, right? Like at the end of the day, is there a certain magic bullet? Again, probably not, but is there a certain magic bullet that helps to find non-remote engineers? You're looking in your community. Anything here?
Sure, I'll give you.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah. So one of the most unsung heroes in any community is that loyal community college instructor who's been teaching for years. And if you can establish a relationship with the community college in your neighborhood that has a department, and probably an underappreciated one, come in as a guest speaker, bring pizza one night to the computer club, write a thank you note to them for referring you somebody who you hire. These folks are our pipeline. They're not going to be a huge pipeline. They're not going to be the only solution, but I think a lot of those great instructors toil in solitary confinement almost without contact to the industry. And so it doesn't take much to really create a relationship there. And it's authentic that you care about their success because you want to help hire from their pipeline. They'll be very interested in hearing from you. And you just have to reach out and figure out who that is. It's not a hard thing to do, and it won't cost you much. And it's right. It's almost in every doorstep. The community college mission is economic development in your community. So they should be able to do this. Not every community college has that staff, but try.
Hey, Greg, you had another question come in. Can
I just add to what Amy said? I also want to say be social. I have had great conversations with Uber drivers, restaurant workers, some of these folks are in transition where, hey, I want to be in tech. It's cool. All right, cool. Well, I'm going through a CompTIA certification right now, and it is amazing how many resumes we've received through that channel. So I think that's just, again, expanding on your relationships within the local community and always being on the lookout. And that's, that works. Stuff like that works.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've hired somebody at the counter of Napa Auto Parts. Back in my MSP hiring days, I'm like, you got some skills. And the other, and I think another thing I meant to mention early on in the landscape, I think MSP hiring is a step on a journey for a lot of folks. Sometimes the progression looks like working a big call center and then an MSP. Sometimes, so you have to look where people are that would be the next step in the career, would be a step up for you. It might be at Best Buy, at Geek Squad. I used to go troll Geek Squad every once in a while and just ask dumb questions and see who was really nice and who seemed like they were ready to get the heck out of a box store. You know, you can always go fishing for talent, and you can be social about it. And you're right. There are certain places where where talent in transition congregates, and that's always going to be the case. So be thinking about asking your employees too, who they know. That we'd be remiss if we didn't say the best hires are oftentimes referrals, and have them think out of the box too. Don't tell them just to think in the box.
Yeah, it's a big thing at ProVal, definitely. And Michael, if you want to read this question out, and then if you want to answer it.
Yeah, so it struck a nerve. I feel like the technicians we've been interviewing are underqualified for the money they are asking for. When do you foresee that bubble to burst and people come back down to reality?
That's a good one.
Two-part question. Yeah, he's got a little bit more on that one. So I don't see this bubble bursting for a while, unfortunately. As long as there is a shortage of techs, you're starting to see a little bit of a change, but there's still a lot of options. As unemployment stands, you know, with the general wide numbers, those numbers for MSPs are so much tighter. So if it's, you know, 6-7% unemployment, generally in the MSP, we're seeing 1 to 2%. That makes the wages, when there's that low of a supply, the wages are going to go up. Now, a little self-serving, it's one of the reasons we started Scaled. We're finding that we're actually, and this is one of the things I love about it, is the people that we're hiring out of South Africa, we're actually able to increase their salaries 20 to 30% over what they're currently making. And we're bringing it in at a price point that's substantially lower than hiring local US techs. It's a little self-serving, so I'm not going to go too far there. He also said, she said, we're also now focusing more on hiring higher level technical talent versus entry level than promoting up. Reason being is we find higher level technical talent stay longer than entry level techs usually stay for a shorter amount of time. So this, I think, is kind of twofold. Amy, I think you'd have something to say on this, that, hey, have that path for them to be able to move up, and absolutely understanding they may grow out and beyond you. Coming in, yeah, sure. Again, self-serving. We've got level 2 and level 3 engineers. They're looking for kind of careers in that place. But I think there's absolutely a way to do both. Sure, you're kind of desperate now getting that level 2 or level 3, but making sure that you've got that culture and that training and a growth plan for somebody coming in at kind of that entry level and being able to grow up with the company. Just making sure that you've got that culture, the family, the team, the things that are going to keep them there for the long run as well.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what you just said about, you know, the market's going to be what the market is. And so we have to figure out a way to dance with that. And I'm sure we all know the pendulum swings and we're at a tight spot, but yeah, it is hard to see when it'll swing back. But it sounds like everyone's forecasting 100% recession in the US, but we're in the tightest market. So how's that going to change what we're doing? We'll see. I think the key thing in this question, I want to drill in, and I don't mean to challenge you, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous attendee, but if you're seeing trouble with your entry-level talent, that's not universal. You might need to really look at how you're doing growth plans. How is there something about maybe cost of living where you are that explains it? Is there something some things are just outside your control, right? But I would say dig into why and keep asking why, and you'll get to the inside of that onion layer. And if you want to ping me on LinkedIn and ask more questions specifically, I'll give you some free consulting.
I was going to say, Amy, as without giving away too much proprietary info about your business, I have been privy to your growth plans at CleverDocs, and this isn't just a high-level statement. This is a matrix where you do this, you get here, you do this, you get there. It is very impressive with what CleverDocs has done in terms of your progression plan for entry-level people. And, you know, we have a similar philosophy. I feel like those people are probably going to be the most loyal employees because they started their careers with your business. And as long as that growth trajectory is maintained and they're being challenged, again, for the right employee, those people are easier to keep than somebody that came in as a senior technician and now, can go elsewhere for more money or what have you. But we've kind of experienced the same thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, there's a law of reciprocity. If you invest in me, I'll invest in you. People have a deep loyalty. And I think if you grow your team to grow your team, they're going to help you grow. But yeah, certainly that's a piece of it. And in full transparency too, I'll tell you the Clever Ducks growth plans that I've worked on for decades with our good team have really influenced my work at CompTIA. And in fact, we're sharing a lot of that same work there because that's how, that was my test kitchen, right? Like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just made this up in a box. It's either worked or it didn't. And I'll tell you, if you can do something in San Luis Obispo, you can do it anywhere. We've got high cost of living, not enough people, and a smaller client base in a lot of places. So yeah, New York, they always say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. But a lot of us are in communities where, it's kind of tough. You have to think about the challenges that we all face and how to have a minimum viable product to get that talent developed. So yeah, I'm sharing what I can from my seat at CompTIA, where I get to focus on workforce development globally. So thanks.
And I just want to, I keep reading this question. It is interesting though, and I hate to play devil's advocate here, but just knowing I'm a little bit younger as
rub it
a
in.
lot of the generation. Hey, well, not Amy. Amy's by far the youngest here, but I think I'm a little younger than Vikram though. So
yeah.
Just from my experience, a lot of the people that graduating college, they think that their first job isn't the end goal. And they're like, oh, well, I can always the grass is always greener, especially with this generation. That's all they think. The grass is always greener. Obviously instill that culture into them. But how would you stop that? Especially with the generation that really they do think that way. So sorry, it was just an interesting question for me that I could see where he's coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think back to what we've been saying, I can't tell you how many peers of mine who are decades into their career have confided in me, like everybody's thinking about, am I in the right place? And what is the grass greener somewhere else in a job? We've really shaken the earth here. And now with mobility too, I think it's just that's what everybody's thinking. So it's not just young people.
Yeah. And 10, 20 years ago, people had careers for life. It's no longer that kind of a setup. And I think if we accept that there are going to be people that come and go, but we make sure that we've got that place for them and it values them and what they want to have out of their life. Greg, you're going to be a very different approach than somebody that would be of my age looking for a job. The sooner we learn to accept and deal with that, the easier it's going to be, because it is changing. You're absolutely right.
But yeah, again, that don't mean to be the devil's advocate. But to your point, if someone sat down with them and really just told them how it is, right? Take wisdom from the wise. I think that goes a long way.
But again, this is what experience is about. Sometimes they just got to make decisions for themselves and move on. And I think that's what is for the employer and the employee, and it's fine. And sometimes people realize that and may come back, right? We've had a lot of employees come back to us saying, hey, we were in a good place. We want to come back, and we're very welcoming. So I think it's just a kind of very, very individualistic and personal situation for both sides.
No, that's a great point, Vikram, all around. Okay, I know we're now a minute over, so I think that just about ends it for us. You guys have been amazing.